Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'd like to bring in friend to the program, Nick. Hey, Nick, how are you doing?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing
I'm happy
very
to be
well.
here.
We're happy to have you. I was
Yeah.
going to say, before we hand this off to you, just want to do some housekeeping items. We'd love to keep this as interactive as possible. Nick is here throughout the entire time. We'd love to answer your questions. So if you have anything that you'd like to ask, submit them below using the Ask the Questions tab, and we'll do our best to answer all of your questions live. And one more thing, we know you guys are here to listen to us, to listen to Nick, but if you guys have any comments or what you'd like to hear at future events, leave us feedback also below the presentation screen. And I know that you guys aren't here to listen to me banter, you guys are here to listen to all the great content that Nick has. So I'll hand it off to you, Nick.
All right. Thanks. So just for those who don't know, I'm Nick Kuhn, and I do. I'm now a product marketing engineer for Tanzu by Broadcom, and I'm covering the Tanzu application service kind of ecosystem and that core product that we offer. And today I'm going to be kind of giving a talk that I did with a few of my colleagues, Amelia and Long from VMware Explore. Barcelona, and we actually did some stuff at Las Vegas as well. But they couldn't join me today. They're busy doing engineering things and like doing really cool things. So I said I'll do the presentation today and then kind of show you what we've all kind of been working on. What we're calling now GenAI for Tanzu Application Service. But we're going to be talking about private AI, some of our Tanzu data services, and how you kind of wire them all up together to make a pretty cool solution. So just a quick here a recap or disclaimer. So I am covering some content that's future facing. We actually just launched the Gen AI for Tanzu Application Service tile or product in beta, official beta, yesterday. So we have some content around there, and if you like what you see here, we have some sign up forms and product pages you can go and you can sign up and kind of get into the beta program. So please stay around and watch for that. But again, just things are in beta, things are not we don't not generally available yet, so things could change, things of that nature. So please just keep that in mind. And then really kind of three goals for the session that I want to cover. First and foremost, we want to kind of show the power of what we call Tanzu application service. It's this very powerful application and maybe even kind of data platform as well that has been wildly successful for many years and kind of deployed across some of the largest companies in the world. And then also we want to highlight our Tanzu data services and how they can be used, in conjunction with Tanzu application service. And then really want to get into this magic of generative AI, how we do that within Tanzu application service, within Spring, within Tanzu data services. So we're going to have kind of an interactive demo throughout the session. Questions are welcome. Just that's kind of be the flow for today. And just kind of a quick agenda. So I'm gonna give you a sneak peek of this Gen AI for Tanzu application service, how it started, where it came from. I'm going to go over a very kind of high level overview of Tanzu application service for those of you who may not be aware of what it is. It's to level set everyone, and then we're going to go into data services. We're going to see how we can wire up these Gen AI services, our applications. Use things like Spring AI to all kind of make a pretty fun and interactive demo and for you today. Now, who could benefit from this session? So obviously, if you're platform engineers, if you're running the platform today, or if you're thinking about adopting a platform, could be a very beneficial service of how you can see, wire up Tanzu application service and its data services and offer a very kind of turnkey and ready to go solution. Obviously, if you're in the developer space, we're going to show you how you can use these technologies to rapidly build new applications, especially these next generation generative AI applications, as we've kind of seen kind of jump up overnight through the industry. And then obviously, if you're a partner, if you're a manager of any type, you can see how you can help um, you know enable your services or teams to use this as well. So just keep that in mind. And again, if there's questions, please let me know. So let's get into a sneak peek of what GenAI for Tanzu application service is. And just to have some quick high level of, I'm going to be talking about some terms, and I just want to make sure we quick high level what those terms are. So we're talking about Gen AI or generative AI. This is this next generation of AI that came about, kind of when this thing called Chat GPT happened overnight and became a widely popular. So you have this generative AI that generates text or images or other types of media. Uh, it's all over the place. There's so many different things happening all at once. But this is kind of this, when we say generative AI or Gen AI, that's what we're talking about. Another big part of this is what we call LLMs or large language models. This is really kind of the engine behind the scene on some of these things, and we may even talk about local large language models where you can pull these models down, run them on a machine, maybe your really souped up MacBook or really powerful desktop or something like that. You can run some of these local large language models that you could build applications on, and maybe even start to like build a chat GPT like service within your own ecosystem. And then obviously we'll be talking about embeddings too, which are pretty important because these large language models are being built by many different organizations. They're open source, and they're being shared on places like Hugging Face. You can go and pull them down, but they're only so useful to, like, they have a date of which their training ended. So if you try to ask it a question past that date, it doesn't know. Or if you try to ask it a question outside of its training data set, it won't know either. But you could supplement that data with what we call embeddings, and like add additional documentation, whether that be maybe a file or maybe we see a music album later, and then augment that training data and make that a little bit more useful for you. And how do we get there? How, this is a very oversimplified story of how Gen AI has happened. But one of our lead engineers on the product, his name is Long, and one day he said to himself, he's like, "Yeah, I'm seeing these cool things like Chat GPT and like Copilot. I really wish I could use them at work." But then, like we see in most cases, and a lot of cases now, uh, our legal teams or corporate compliance teams, security teams are saying absolutely not, and into the effect where things like Chat GPT are getting blocked wholeheartedly from corporations, because there's just this kind of this massive unknown of you sending data up to it, whether you publishing documents or asking questions like, where is all this data going, and is it getting trained? Is our intellectual property somehow at risk if we send it up to some of these services and it gets trained and then builds that into its data set, and then uh, you know potentially leaks it out to another place? So there's a lot of concerns about just generally using some of these third party services, or kind of SaaS type services that um, your corporate intellectual property could be not a great place to send this to. So that's, we're starting to see this as a trend. This kind of terminology of like private AI or private generative AI has come about, where many folks are trying to help solve that, and offer solutions where you can still use these very innovative technologies without potentially risking your data. Now, Long continued on this thought process, and he said, "Well, I am an engineer. Specifically, he works on the Bosch team here within Tanzu, and Bosch is this very powerful kind of infrastructure as code automation engine, how you will call it, and it's kind of like multiple things put together, like a Terraform and Ansible, and it's actually, if we go way back in time, it was derived from some Google engineers that left Google, and who originally built the Borg system that runs kind of like Google in general. So it's a really powerful tool. We do a lot of really cool things with it here at Tanzu. But he's a Bosch engineer, and Bosch is great at building software, deploying software, at scale. And he says, "Well, what if I just started building this stuff myself so we can run it internally?" So the story continues, and then let's build a prototype. So within that prototype, what did that prototype look like? So we when we say we, I mean Long mostly, built a large language model as a service via Bosch, and because Bosch is this great, is within kind of embedded in the Tanzu application service ecosystem, we kind of sideloaded it to an existing Tanzu application service deployment. Uh, we also kind of served or brought in what we call fast chat, which allows us to run an open AI compatible API, which is very similar to like the general open AI service that you call, but really open AI has become like this kind of standard of kind of how you communicate with these models across the industry. So that's there's many things that you can do like open AI calls too. So we've used that as a standard to have this like kind of industry standard API call to make, and then those are then backed by large language models. Specifically in the prototype, we used Llama 2. So then we took it a step further. We built this kind of large language model prototype as a service, and then we developed an application that runs on Tanzu application service to then use this new generative AI service. And what does that really look like behind the scenes? Again, we have what we call the large language model kind of tile as a very first release. It ran this OpenAI compatible server, fast chat, which then wires up worker nodes, and then those worker nodes, typically then attach to GPUs and then run these models. And then our TAS application talked to that API via just normal like HTTP calls, like microservice calls type of thing, and then was able to interact with the API and essentially ask the model questions and go from there. And another kind of key thing too is that we started using Postgres databases to store embeddings, and then starting to train some of these models. So that this is at a very kind of was our rough kind of prototype of how we got started. We actually took this idea to the VMware Explorer 2003 Las Vegas hackathon, and we got first place. So that was our team. So Long and Amelia were from Team Tanzu, myself, and then we actually had Jonathan from Garmin. He joined us as well as he's one of our TAS customers, and he kind of liked our idea. So we all kind of worked together and presented this, and I think the folks at the hackathon agreed that we kind of built something cool, and we kind of took that from there and kept going. So now, let's just do a little quick level set of what Tanzu application service is before we get to some of these demos, and then we'll see how we took this hackathon idea into kind of a product per se. So just a quick high-level view. I've talked already a lot about Tanzu application service, but Tanzu application services is kind of our modern application platform. It's very pluggable, so we have a lot of different support for different languages, and we can do that via build packs. We have especially great support for Spring, Java Spring apps, Spring Boot applications. We also do have some really good support for Windows and .NET framework applications as well. So we got a pretty good Windows story too. But we can do things like auto scaling. We auto wire metrics and logging. There's a lot of pluggability within the CI/CD marketplace for Tanzu application service. We can do all these great things like offer messaging, streaming, database as a service via our Tanzu data services via a very simple interface. And this platform, it's multi-cloud by default. Bosch knows how to talk to all these different types of infrastructures and kind of replicate itself and build the platform, whether you're running on a VMware environment or on Google or Azure or AWS, that type of thing. Now, what we really see from the platform for like core benefits. So we see this massive scale of operational efficiency within the platform. We'll even get to a point where we have the ratios of single platform engineers or teams of platform engineers that they will support 500 to 1. So developer community of thousands, but that ratio is 500 to 1 or more or higher. So these teams can be very effective with this platform. I'll be showing you CF Push, which is that core developer experience that allows you to easily get to your code from just source code into production in minutes, and that just really lets developers kind of not worry about infrastructure really at all. We have this extensive service marketplace where we can extend the application runtime to database as a service, things of that nature, or large language model as a service. The platform Zero Trust by default, where we have some very some good practices around container security and container networking security and things of that nature. And because we use Bosch under the covers, we can do things like what we call repave, like where the platform will rebuild itself on the fly. And some of our customers actually do this just from a security perspective, once a week or every few days, just to get a clean golden image. And there's no downtime involved in that either. So they can do that. They can just constantly be repaving their infrastructure just from a to get to that clean state all the time. Now, that said, where is this platform grounded? Like, what is the main kind of mission that we see from, like, especially in the developer lens of Tanzu application service? And it all goes back to this haiku back when we called the product Pivotal Cloud Foundry in the Pivotal days. But it reads, "Here's my source code. Run it in the cloud for me. I don't care how." And that's what we're trying to do with our developer experience with CF Push, where a developer can run a single command, CF Push. It's going to upload the code. It's going to detect what type of code it is, and it will build a best practice container for you. And using what we call build packs, it's going to set up routing, load balancing, encryption, certificates, health monitoring, logging subsystems, app metrics. It's going to start it and make sure it has running at that desired number of instances that you defined. It's got a pretty robust app autoscaler that you can scale the app up and down based on a variety of parameters. And then, of course, you can bind to all these specific backing services where you can easily inject, let's say, a database or a message queue, or even the generative AI service into your application without really changing a whole lot of things. Now, I said a lot of things and I did a lot of slides. Let's get into actual some demo here, so we can kind of start setting the stage for the demos down the road. All right, so let me oops, I got to break out of Google Slides here. I'm still learning Google Slides versus PowerPoint, so bear with me if I have some awkward back and forth. All right, we're in VS Code. So now I'm put on my developer hat. I have a application, it's a Java application, a Spring Boot application, and I want to get that push somewhere. All right, so how am I gonna deploy? I'm gonna use CF push, right? So CF push, right? I'm in my code base. Let me command ++ this a little. It's gonna push this up to the platform, and it's already started uploading the code. You'll start to see where it's going to be looking to see what type of application it is and go from there. So it's downloading the Java build pack. It's detected that it's a Java apps. It's using the Java build pack. It's doing things like calculating the best memory settings for my Java application. It's going to wire in some certificates. It's going to get it all ready to go and start the application, get it behind the platform load balancer and things of that nature. So in a few more seconds here, my app will be running live, and I'll just be able to go from there. All right, so it's done. I don't know, maybe that was less than a minute to what we could say production and ready to go. So all right, I don't need this anymore. So let's go back to my browser here and probably have to zoom in this a little bit more. All right, let me refresh because of course my timed out here. All right, so let me log back in. And for those of you who haven't seen this before, we'll go back to this view. This is Apps Manager. So this is one of the kind of the primary user or GUI interfaces for Tanzu Application Service. We're starting off in our view. We have orgs, and you might be asked, what's an org? Well, an org, we have things called orgs and spaces within the platform, and that allows us to build this really efficient and hard multi-tenant platform behind the scenes, and actually, the I guess technical detail behind the scenes is that we have our own container scheduler called Diego that really lets us like abstract that container runtime away from the developers, and it allows us to be a very multi-tenant platform where we'll have thousands of potential hundreds of thousands of teams running on this, and thousands or tens of thousands of developers running these platforms and large organizations. So let's get into this. So I've an org called Kuhn Labs. In reality, this is going to be like line of business. So maybe like a merchandising or R&D or whatever, depending on the business. So I'm going to go into my Kuhn Labs org. I have a space, and in reality too, uh, uh, these are typically like teams. So you might have like a team, an A team or a B team or a C team or whatever, or like team XYZ. But I'm going into this GenAI samples team because I'm just doing this by myself, so I don't really have any, team names or multi teams to show. So we went and deployed this application. It's ready to go. So let's click into it, and we're already going to see that we have, just some base telemetry where, we have one instance started, how much memory it's allocated, disk space, how many logs it's emitting. per second. And then if you're another thing too, like when you start to run large application platforms, your your overall logging volume as a platform engineer becomes really important, because you start running a lot of apps, they'll generate a lot of logs, and if you're shipping them off somewhere else, how many logs you're shipping is can be very important down the road. But we can drill into this and see things like the actuator endpoints from Spring. So this is where we have a little secret sauce within the platform for Spring applications, where we can kind of get additional telemetry. We can go down here and actually pull like Spring threads out of that too. So if you ever try to like pull like a heap dump out of like a running container and really any kind of system, it could be quite troublesome. So you can just do that here. But let's get into the route here. Let's see the actual application. And if you've seen any of my demos before, if you've seen some demos around Cloud Foundry, Tanzu Application Service, you'll see this application called Spring Music used a lot. Well, Amelia on her team got a hold of this and kind of changed it a little bit. So we now have a Spring Music Tailor's version, and it's a Spring Boot application that's built around music albums. And we are really solely focused on the Taylor Swift genre here. So this app was designed to really show that user provided service, or the marketplace offering of how we bind databases to it and things of that nature. So the kind of the first part of this demo is let's add an album and then see what happens to this album, like if we restart the application. So I'm going to do I Love Taz. Let's use Tanzu by Broadcom as the artist, 2024, DevOps. Yeah, so I've done this demo a little bit before. So we're going to click OK. All right, and I loaded this album, and I created a new album. And where this is stored is stored in in-memory database on the application. So that's kind of a problem down the road if you wanted to get to production, because if I just stop this application and then start this application, you'll see the album went poof, right? It's gone because it was in memory. So like in real world, you can easily deploy your application, but you really want to make sure that let's go back to here. Yeah, that album's gone, right? Well, like we don't want to lose real data in real world situations. This is where kind of that marketplace thing comes into play. But let's just go real quick back to the slides, and then we'll get back into it. So slideshow here. Let's go. Google Slides loading.
Hey, Nick, we had a
Yeah,
question, if we can cover this question.
sure.
Someone had asked, is Bosch the stuff that Cloud Foundry uses?
Yes, yeah. So Tanzu Application Service is based on the Cloud Foundry open source ecosystem. It is it is Tanzu's version, commercially supported version of Cloud Foundry behind the scenes, and Bosch is the kind of the underlying ecosystem for Cloud Foundry in general. So yeah, and if you have more questions around that, just put them in chat. But hopefully I address your question there. So what are we going to talk about too? So we have an application, we can deploy it, but we don't have a database or like really anything to store this data. And like in microservices, containers, things go up and down. You want to make sure you can store that data like in a persistent way. Otherwise, bad things might happen, like lose a bunch of data. So do we have an answer to that? We have a lot of different services at Tanzu that offer we have like Greenplum, which is this massively parallel data warehouse, which is very powerful. We're not going to talk about, we're not covering Greenplum here today, but that is an option if you have data warehousing needs. We have RabbitMQ, which is a great for, message queue, like very popular message broker and message service. We have database options like Postgres and MySQL, caching, Redis. We have Gemfire, which is a pretty advanced in-memory kind of data grid solution. So it's very powerful caching mechanism as well. So there's a bunch of different services that we can offer to help you out in your data journey. And what's really great about Tanzu Application Services, a lot of these services can be auto-wired into the platform, so we can just deploy them on the fly and deploy them in minutes, very similarly to how we pushed our app. And I think that's still, even in 2024, that's still a very, very good use case just to get reliable, fast, and mission critical data services on the fly. So one, what does that flow really look like, right? So we have our Tanzu application service. It's running applications. We have this marketplace that's in there, which we'll get into just a few moments. But you can add all these different services, whether it be MySQL, Redis, Gemfire, Rabbit. We also have these things called the cloud service brokers that will then also talk to the hyperscaler. So if you want to consume, like you can run Tanzu application service multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, everywhere cloud, whatever, anywhere basically you want to run it. But you can also, like for instance, you can run it on top of AWS infrastructure, but then you can use the cloud service broker marketplace to then deploy apps in this easy fashion, and also easily consume things like S3 buckets and auto wire that into your application, or whatever, Dynamo DB. I think I can't keep a track of all the different names of all the cloud offerings, but that's another option too. So like you see these flows that I'm doing, you can also apply similar flows to some of these cloud native solutions if you are in cloud, if you're in some of these hyperscalers too. So we're going to kind of show today. I'm a developer. I have my application A. I should have probably updated this to talk about Spring Music Taylor's version, but I can easily request a MySQL or a Postgres instance, and then that's going to actually use Bosch under the covers to build a VM and wire that up and say Bosch is going to say you're a Postgres database. We're gonna build you up from this golden image and make you ready to go, and then we're gonna wire up all your service credentials and JDBC connection strings and everything. Wire that back up in and automatically inject that into your application, and your app is just going to be able to talk to that like magic, right? So that's kind of the flow of what we're going to show. And I do want to highlight like Postgres, right? Postgres actually just recently came out late last year. So this is like a new data service we're offering within this kind of on-demand marketplace. So I'll be working a lot with Postgres, and I'm working with Postgres today because once we get into this generative AI layer, Postgres has this really cool thing called PG Vector, and that's how we can store embeddings. So we're still waiting. If you've seen some of this content before and you want to get to the generative AI stuff, so just bear with me a few more minutes. We'll get there. But I'm kind of setting the stage here. So yes, if you want Postgres on demand, we can offer that now for you. And that's probably new for the folks who've been in the community for a while. This is a relatively recent development, so just check that out. Now let's get back to the demo here. All right, so we need to go. All right, here. So we're in Apps Manager. We've restarted our application. We lost our album. We need a database too. So let's go back, and if we look at the marketplace, now this is a relatively one of my smaller labs. So I don't, this marketplace could be a lot longer list. I only have a very few core services here just because I'm pure resource bound, and we'll get into that in a minute. So I've got Postgres, I've got my GenAI service, I've got App Autoscaler if I want to scale this thing up and down. I'm not going to because I don't know if I have that much capacity left on the lab. And I have user provided services where I could potentially wire in, let's say, an external database or solution where I can have that kind of same similar auto injection in the application code style format. But I want to make a Postgres database because I need one, right? So let's go see how easy that is. I have this plan set up. This is not, this is just kind of some of the stock plans that we can set up, but you can, as a platform engineer, you can go behind the scenes in Ops Manager and configure different plans and different, configuration, sizing, VM sizing, HA settings and things of that nature. But this is just very basic because I am in a relatively small lab. So I'm going to select this plan, and I'm just going to call this Postgres DB01. All right, and I'm not going to bind this to my application. I'm just going to add it to the space, and I'm going to click create. So on the back end there, it's talking to vCenter. It's building the VM and kind of making that whole process go. Now that process does take a few minutes. It's not as fast as pushing an app because we're creating VMs and from scratch. So I'm going to let that cook, and then kind of this traditional baking show format. I'm going to go back because I've already made a database, and we can use that one we've already cooked. So if we go here, so we have the one that's the GenAI database one that's ready. So just a few minutes before starting this, I kicked this off. So I wanted to make sure we had this ready to go. And then we can actually then add the new GenAI service and kind of show these kind of working in tandem too. So if we go back to my app, get in my application, and here's another view of like, I'm a developer. I want to add services, right? So I can just add service, and I know I went and already built this Postgres database, so I can just bind it to the service. So I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to bind my GenAI DB1 ready. That's ready to go, and I'm just going to click bind. So this is where the magic happens of like we're taking these database credentials and things and wiring this up as essentially environment variables within the application. And then I need a new service. I'm going to add my GenAI service because I want to do cool things. And we're going to select this plan, and I'm going to call this just LLM, whatever. Hit create. And we're actually going to bind that too, as well to this application. So what's going on in the back end here is we are wiring up, essentially getting credentials to talk to this API that is running fast chat and is talking to these large language models. That's actually back to a VM that's got an NVIDIA Tesla T4 that's kind of used to run this language model. So while that's creating, let's maybe refresh and see if that's still going here. All right, so those are ready to go. They're bound to the application. We need to restage the application, so we're going to do that. That's going to inject those newly bound services into the application. And while that happens, let's see here. Let's go into we can go into, I think this is it, my vCenter. All right, so we'll log into vCenter here. This is what I call my mobile app, where it's actually running on a 20-liter mini PC. And you can see just based on the capacity, I've got about like 5 gigs free left on this box. So that's why I'm not doing some of these more kind of auto scaling or other demos. It's going pretty, it's getting pretty close on this. But part of this why I wanted to do this is that I really wanted to like have, I guess, a portable lab where I can, tote this thing around. I actually toted this thing around Barcelona for some reason because we took it to the hackathon there. It was mixed results of it was cool to bring it there and show it there, but my back really hurt after a few days of carrying this thing around. So I don't know if I'll do international trips with this thing anymore. But the short story is I really wanted to show how you could like run all of this on a relatively small piece of hardware, because sometimes people conflate like Cloud Foundry or Tanzu application service for being like this monster thing to get started with, and you could start out with a relatively small deploy. We actually have a special deploy. It's called small runtime, which just deploys on a handful of VMs. So, but then the platform can scale out to this, relatively large, highly redundant, highly available, kind of large platform that goes on to multiple availability zones and things of that nature. So you can start out small and go to like really production ready as needed. But anywho, we're running on a relatively small hardware. There's these Postgres instances that we're creating on the fly here, wired up. This is all these VMs are managed and kind of built by Bosch, and that's where we see some of these like GUID names type come by. We should go back to here. That should be restaged. Let's see here. Let's refresh this page. Okay, so this page refreshed, and now you see in the bottom right hand screen, there's a Spring Music Assistant popped up. Well, because this application is wired up to pick up these new services, it's detected that we have a Postgres database, and it's detected that we have a large language model. So like it has code built into it to activate the Spring Music Assistant. Once it's detected, it's attached to the GenAI service. So that's kind of cool. And let's go. I'm gonna hopefully got my rectangle deployed here. I gotta do some screen formatting here. All right, so I'll do this, do that. All right, all right. I have a terminal on left-hand pane, or my left side of my screen. It's actually inside the worker VM. We're inside this VM here. If we go down to this worker GenAI worker, so this is the actual machine that's running the large language model. We scroll down somewhere, we'll see. Yeah, so we have we're actually doing PCI pass-through direct to this Tesla T4. That's obviously these things to operate within a reasonable speed kind of require GPUs to pull off. You could run some of these models on CPUs, but they're relatively a lot slower. And in terms of like where we want to integrate them into web applications, these, seconds or tens of seconds of delays can be kind of catastrophic in terms of like timeouts and things of that nature. So that's kind of why we're, really focused on GPUs. But anyway, so I got this worker set up. It's ready to go. Let's go back to our app. Now, like, we should probably ask it a question, right? Like, it's this assistant. Like, I don't know what's going on. Let's ask it a question. Now, the model that's trained off of was like trained off, like the derivative was trained off of like all of Wikipedia. So it knows a whole lot about Taylor Swift. So we're not going to ask it about Taylor Swift because, you know, it already knows a lot about. So let's ask it about something that doesn't know. And I'm fairly certain that, post 2021, it doesn't know anything about the music artist named Tanzu by Broadcom. So let's see how this goes today. Can you tell me what albums did the artist Tanzu by Broadcom produce? Now, we're going to tell this is a live demo here because sometimes. Oh, thanks, Grammarly. No. Sometimes we'll get a variety of answers because these models are trying to figure things out. All right, so on the left hand screen we saw this little blip here. This blue blip. We went way up and way down. That was the actual GPU, processor utilization went all the way up to 100 and down. Because it got that request from my application, it hit, and it processed that request. And the yellow line here is like the GPU VRAM of the model loaded in it. So as we're asking it questions, we can watch it go up and down and see it do different things. Now, this did this is exactly what I kind of expected it to say. I'm sorry, I don't have any albums produced by the artist Tainted by Broadcom because it doesn't have know anything about that, right? So let's try to fix that here. So I'm going to add an album and call it I Love Taz again. We're going to do Tanzu by Broadcom, release year 2024, DevOps. I've done this a few times. Hit OK. Scroll down and hit OK. All right, so now we had this little blue blip again. Well, because what happened is when we saved that album in that Postgres database, it then got processed as an embedding, so as an additional knowledge to the Spring Music Assistant's language, like training model or large language model. So now let's ask it the same question again. If everything's with me today, we should get a pretty interesting response. So now we can see we're back the blue line. The AI is thinking, it's crunching this because it's like, oh, it's going to take a little bit longer. And let's see. But it's completely more so let's ask it one more thing. What song? So it's been a little tricky with this GPU. I have some other GPUs that are more powerful. So what song did the artist Tanzu by Broadcom produce? Let's see if it comes back. Sometimes these language models aren't exactly 100%, unfortunately, but maybe we can get a better answer here. All right, so now it kind of picked up the question again. Maybe I don't know, maybe I didn't like how I asked it the first time, but the artist Tanzu by Broadcom produced an album, I Love Taz, in 2024, which is in the genre of DevOps. The song that Nick really loves from this album is GenAI for Taz. So that's kind of more of the response that we were looking to. And I think if we had a little bit more powerful GPU behind this thing, we probably get more predictable results. But this is still relatively a low-powered small GPU, and we'll see that in a second why. But again, this is just really scratching the surface of what we could build, right? Where if you imagine these albums are potentially your own documents, things of that nature, where you could start training these models to maybe build like a support chat bot, or start analyzing some of these documents for sentiment analysis, things of that nature. So That's just a really high level of what we've built so far. We're also, let's go back into the slides here. All right. So where was this running? Well, yeah, this is running in this small little kind of mini PC in my basement, and this, this allowed me to kind of tote this thing around. Obviously, I have it running. If you've seen my blog or anything, I have a more robust home lab as well. I can run that there as well. On in a real world, like we'd be running on real servers and everything too, and like someone's data center or on VMs produced by AWS and things of that nature. So, but again, to pull off any of this in this small footprint, if you're new to Tanzu application service, you haven't seen it, you can get started on a relatively small footprint and grow from there, and kind of do some pretty cool things right off the bat. And then I like Star Wars, and I like putting Grogu everywhere, so props for that. Again, just to reiterate, recap what we did here, we have this architecture. With the GenAI for TAS, we're doing OpenAI compatible endpoints. We're using fast chat. We're wiring up large language models via worker VMs with GPUs attached. We use Postgres for TAS to use that PT vector embeddings, where we can start to get more intelligent trained responses. And then we push that Spring Music application that actually uses Spring AI to do a lot of that cool AI magic behind the scenes to do some of this kind of call and response. And furthermore, kind of behind the scenes too, and what we're kind of looking for going forward is that within some of the this is a tile within the TAS ecosystem. You can load that, and you know if you've looked at Hugging Face or seen any of this, like as a cursory glance or kind of, played around with any of it, that these models are being produced and changing at a very rapid rate. So we've kind of built in the ability where we're not like proactively like shipping or prescribing you what model to use. You can essentially tell our system what you want to pull from Hugging Face. It'll pull that down and load that in that worker VM. And we're looking at building the ability to have multiple worker VMs spun up with different models. So let's say I want to model like this Vicuna model that we were using was kind of geared towards the chat response type of or chatbot type of workflow. But then maybe I want to have some like Copilot flows where you could then have a worker model that's running the code llama, one of the code llama models that's geared to more, instead of natural human language type, it's more of a coding language. And you can then there's a lot of different like VS Code plugins that allow you to just like plumb up a large language model on the fly. And a lot of folks are using these like third-party services, but then they're also paying for like a per token rate too. So like every question they ask it's like build and things. And then of course they have the problem of, are you just sending all this code up to somewhere and back? So we're kind of exploring ways to offer that additional type of capability as well, other than just kind of the web server type flows too. So these things are changing fast. We're building into to be flexible, and you can bring your own model too theoretically as well and pull that down just based on how you publish. I think a lot of organizations actually publish things on Hugging Face, and you can pull them down too. So uh, a lot of that, like, we're still working. It's like this is still in beta, and we're looking for feedback. So again, if you like what we just saw here, please. I think we'll have the links too. I have a QR code at the bottom too here soon, but like, please kind of stay tuned and sign up for that beta if you want to learn more. But one other thing too I want to call out is how like we could easily kind of provision this from an infrastructure perspective. We can give you this kind of curated AI stack and wire up databases for you on the fly. But what kind of makes this, what's another layer of kind of magic is what we call Spring Boot or Spring AI too in particular. But by using a platform like Tanzu Application Service, you got all these additional Spring capabilities. So we already kind of covered some of those in Apps Manager, where you can get additional like telemetry and visualization out of Spring Boot applications. We have 3 additional add-on tiles like that you can, we have Spring Cloud Gateway for Tanzu, which is like a full kind of API gateway that you can layer on that's really geared for Spring applications. We have Spring Cloud Services, where you could do like service discovery and some config server management. If you're in the data space, you can build some pretty advanced data pipelines or like data batch processing jobs with Spring and Spring Cloud Data Flow. So like the Spring ecosystem is pretty large. You can do all kinds. There's plugins and libraries for different use cases, and then of course we have this thing called Tanzu Spring Runtime, which is built into the platform. That license is included, and we're seeing too recently we do provide Spring open source support, but then that has a certain timer where like the open source support will end. We need people to upgrade their applications going forward, but there's a lot of folks who decided they want additional support time. So we're offering extended commercial support releases for spring versions. So like if you're on Spring 2.7, that recently went end of life and things of that nature. So if you're a big Spring shop and you have platform needs, or if you're already using Tanzu application service, a lot of folks don't realize that this comes with this Tanzu Spring runtime commercial support for free, so you get more time to upgrade your Spring applications, and you get access to some of the the Spring experts in the world, like some of the best, because Tanzu maintains Spring, and we have some of the best Spring people in the world building Spring itself. So if you do have certain developer questions or things that nature, you can use this platform to get access to some of the Spring experts as well. Now enough plugs about Spring, but getting into the nitty gritty of how an application developer may say, well, this is great and wonderful, but how do I build an application to do some of that stuff, right? So what Spring AI is like this new kind of like sub project within Spring Boot, but it's drawing inspiration for like some projects. If you're familiar with like Python has been kind of in this AI ML space for quite some time. So there's all these different type of modules and things that you can load, like LangChain or Llama Index, that help make some of these calls pretty easy to do. And Spring AI was built to do that. So if you're a Spring developer, you don't have to like learn a whole new language. You can just pick up this new new kind of project within Spring Boot and just kind of go from there. And obviously, generative AI is kind of taking off, and I think this need to do this type of stuff is kind of be ubiquitous. So this really Spring AI is trying to help make this these generative AI abstractions relatively easy to use within that Spring community. So you don't have to like rebuild your code base or like go somewhere else type of thing. Just to do this type of stuff. And then really, like, I'm going to show a few little code snippets too of how we actually kind of did this with Spring Music. Now we had some really smart people behind the scenes helping us build this out, but and shout out to the entire Spring team because they helped us. But just from a very quick level, like, so here's a code block here, but like we needed to make a user message out of the question. So like, what are we doing? Like from the little question that I typed into the chat bot. So that's like kind of step one. Step two, let's query any related documents or embeddings from Postgres and see if we can then use those to then pass those related context and questions to the model and then get a response. So that's relatively easy to do within Spring AI and Spring Boot. But that just kind of shows you a little bit of an example of how to do that and get some of that question and response answers from the platform. Now, that being said, I covered a lot today already. I am open for questions. We have a little bit more time left, but this QR code should direct to a sign up page. We actually have a brand new product page launched yesterday, so you can go there. There's a sign up form there as well. We have a blog ready too that we launched, that if you want to learn more about it. I have a very similar style demo on YouTube as well if you want to show this to someone else. I do believe this whole Bright Talk recording will be available probably shortly after this call is ended as well, if you want to share this with your friends. But yeah, let's see if there's how many questions we have and how we want to go from there.
Thanks, Nick. Just to let folks know, scan the QR code right now. I think we'll probably leave it on this slide as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have the links in the attachment section below. So you'll receive it in the post-event email. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm the voice from above, so I'll put myself back here on camera with you, Nick. We did get a question here.
Okay.
The question is,
Regarding Postgres tile and their SI, will it be licensed just like MySQL in the near future?
Yeah, so the Postgres tile is included in if you have the data services suite, data services suite SKU, or it's licensed like a service instance. So I believe you're probably already entitled to Postgres.
Cool. And then one more question here is, how is this different from public Gen AI capabilities?
Um, that's a good question. So uh, I think the whole kind of the premise here is that um, we're running it like locally. So like all of this happened on that little tiny box uh, within my basement and like my home network, right? So that's kind of like, well, from what I see out of this product, right? So we have Tanzu application service. We have this big, kind of big install developer base where we have a lot of developers using it. They're happy today, but they're starting to ask questions like, man, what is this generative AI thing? How can I build apps for that? And this is where we want to offer. We want to make it really easy for them to use that, and then also not just be immediately blocked by their security concerns of like, well, no, you can't use these public services because we're not going to allow our data, or the company's data, whoever's data. We can't, like, it's already against our corporate policy for you to send your data somewhere else, type of thing. And um, yeah, whether that be like a financial industry or like automotive or whatever, like a lot of corporations are already starting to adopt like, we'll just block chat gpt, or like you're not allowed to use it, or only under these certain type of use cases, type of deal. And I think too, we're starting to see issues where like, how do we know even what's been already sent up has been like legitimately obtained, or there's like intellectual property concerns too about using some of these public services. So um, that's where kind of the beauty, and that's where I think that's too, just industry wide, we start to see all these local large language models pop up that people are all then like pulling them in and the kind of running them within their own regard, because again, just it's like, if I were like, hey, let's build an application based on all of these support tickets, are we get like, and then send all these support tickets up as embeddings to help the AI process it and answer questions better. Are you like, what's in those tickets? Are you okay to send those all up to a third party that may be a competitor down the road, or things of that nature? So um, that type of thing. It's just really data sovereignty concerns and how you secure data. Is like, that's the big number one, I think, use case for this type of Gen AI. Sorry, that was,
Okay.
that was a really long-winded question, a long-winded answer. Hopefully I answered that. But
No, that was great. We did just get a big question here. I don't know if you saw that come in.
mm,
Let me just look through this quickly.
let's
Do you see
see.
that on your end there, Nick?
Oh, okay, I
Um,
see. All right. Do I understand correctly? That was,
and while Nick is reading through that question,
yeah.
just want to say thank you guys for submitting your questions. I think we have a few more minutes, so if you have any more questions, continue to submit them in.
Yeah. So in their question, do I understand that correctly? That those LLVMs hit a publicly available API for the base data set. So that API that we're serving is within Bosch, so like it's in your internal domain. So your app calls this internal like API, and then it calls those large language models. The only point in which we're like going to the out egressing out of the to the internet per se is to initially pull that open source model down for you. Now, if you were in the ability of like, I train my own models, like, sure, like we can, potentially go like evaluate loading your own models too. And then in this example for this app, it used Postgres for embeddings, and it's a relatively simple data set, right? But if you have your own, like, if you have a data set that's, supports embeddings, and a lot of these data store solutions do, you could potentially have your application then call that for some of its database or data solution. Right now, when we start talking about like petabytes of in-house data, that's more like data warehousey type of stuff. Maybe that's kind of where like a green plum comes into play of like, how do we, how do we sort through all that data and like tag it and things of that nature. I don't know how that, I assume there's some kind of like system that's storing that amount of data. So maybe that system has then capabilities to be referenced, or where your apps on task could call that and reference it. I know Postgres, or sorry, not Postgres, Greenplum, it has vector support recently as well. So, if it's in a Greenplum, then maybe we can call that vector database type thing. But I think that's more of a how we get down into like where that data is, like what's that data running on, where's it running, how's it stored, what kind of system is available for us to interact with that. But that would be really at the app layer where your app can, we don't have to use Postgres to do this. Like obviously, uh, we like this Postgres tile we just built, and we want you to use some of our stuff. But if you do have this other thing, right, you can call out to it and then still use this thing as well. Hopefully that answered your question there.
Thanks, Nick. And you probably see that there. There are some shout outs there just saying thank you and good job.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's really also appreciated too, because I love the questions and the feedback. There's nothing worse than doing a presentation and then having no questions or no anything. So thank you for all that.
Well, it does look like that's all the questions, all the feedback that we had. Today's presentation gets us right here at the time. Nick, any last closing remarks you'd like to say?
No, just thanks for coming out. And if you're interested, sign up for the beta and we'll be in touch.
Excellent. I just want to say thank you to Nick. Thank you to Mia in the background who helped to set this webinar up. I do want to thank all of you guys for joining us today. As you see, the QR code is still here on the screen. There's some attachments we've already included in the attachment section below. All the great questions, all the great feedback. If you haven't already, let us know how we did, how we're doing, what you'd like to hear at future events by leaving us feedback, hitting the Rate This tab below the presentation screen. And in case you're wondering, this has been recorded, so you can see Nick any time of day, whenever you'd like to, if you look at the recording. So thank you, Nick. We hope to have you back on the program. I'm sure we will soon enough. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.